It's day 3 of the RSAC Conference 2025. I was supposed to do this yesterday, but there was this whole thing, and like, who knew certain barnyard animals were not allowed to be kept in hotel rooms in San Francisco? I it was like a really open-minded place, but apparently not. Anyway, I'm Doug White from the Security Weekly News. Once again, I'm joined by the master of all hidden paths, the esteemed Jeff Mann. Hi, Jeff.
Good morning, Doug. We might be just a touch punchy on day 3.
That's possible.
Because there's a lot of things going on at this conference. If you've never been to RSAC conference, there's the vendor floor, there's party after party after party after networking events where everybody's trying to sell something to everybody else and everybody's trying to figure out, can I sell something to you? Can I sell something to you? But there's also interactive events. Of course, there's how many tracks did we decide? There's hundreds and hundreds of talks going on. I know a few people that were giving talks yesterday. One buddy of mine apparently did a very well-received talk. And so there are things that you can learn here. People come to learn. People come to buy. People come to sell. People come to experience it. People come to say that they've been here. And then there's San Francisco.
It is like a whole thing. Yeah.
It is a whole thing.
We were walking last night back, and there's every block you'd see like a doorway, and you think, oh, that's some posh club, but it was like, oh no, that's a company hosting a party. Because then we keep looking at it. I think the hottest new club in town that you're never going to get into, and they've got the Velvet.
Well, it is the hottest new club in town, literally, but it's only going to be there for another 2 days.
But we might get in. Unlike normal, where we go to the club and they go, no, I don't think so. But yeah, last night we were able to we could get into the parties, and we went to some things. We're not telling you what, but I brought my map, and I wanted to demonstrate something to you.
Okay.
Now, my father was an accountant, right?
Okay.
And he was very meticulous about his maps. And this is from the old days, right? So you got to remember.
I mean, you might have to explain to people what maps are.
Yeah, so we used to have to find our way around with a thing called a map, which is a giant bedsheet-sized piece of paper, and you drew little dots on it, and then you got lost and tried to figure out what the name of the street was after you asked some hobo, like, what is this? But this is like how I would fold up maps because it made logical sense to me. But again, I was doing this yesterday, and
don't rip it.
Out. Okay, the map thing has not worked, not yet. No more maps. That's the end of the map stories. But yeah, so I did see some things. So there was the map is useful, but they do have an app. Like
yes.
You
and
can
they want
be
you
modern,
to use the app,
and they want you to use the app. The maps are for elderly people that can't handle it. So
in years past, there'd be like a plastic wallet badge holder that had the map in a little pocket in it, so everybody was walking around with the map.
I remember having those. Yeah, but this
year
they serious map.
This year it's just the paper badge.
It's like the New York subway map or something.
Well, it is.
It's actually more complicated than that.
But you kind of need it. There's no way you can go onto the expo floor and just try to see everything.
No, I don't think
so. You kind of need to have a purpose to, if you want to visit a particular company, find out what your current vendor is doing or what's new, you kind of need to know where they are. You're never just going to, unless they're one of the big vendors that have the 87,000 foot booths that are 80 feet wide that apparently some people pay $1 million for. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I heard that. But yeah, the expo
those
floor
might be visible, but
the expo floor is like going to like a serious art museum, and you really, like you see these tourists go to these art museums, and they're like, we're going to see every painting in the Louvre, starting with painting number 1, and like 19 hours later, you're still in the first wing going, right. I don't even know what these are, but we're going to see them all. So if you're going to go to the expo, it's really a good idea to get some sort of map. You can use modern stuff and find things that you do want to see. I mean, obviously they want you to walk around and be attracted to crazy over-the-top things, which is fine, just like you would at a carnival, and that's how you lose your wallet and maybe
I was having that thought. I did have a chance to walk on the expo floor for a little bit yesterday, and I had that exact thought. It's like the carnival barkers.
Oh no, it's like, it's absolutely like that.
And everybody's got to come up with a unique and different way. I mean, I remember coming here probably almost 10 years ago where the topic that year was vulnerability management, chasing the vulnerabilities, and vulnerability whack-a-mole. So like, I found a whack-a-mole machine yesterday. It's like, oh, somebody's bringing back the whack-a-mole machine. It was literally there because I was down the row and I kept hearing thump, 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 thump. I was like, yep, that's whack-a-mole.
No, I mean, it's really cool. And I mean, you definitely, if you're here, you should go check it out, because I think that it's definitely something to see. It is like a carnival, and you're not quite ready for it. I mean, I know you've been to cons before, and I had too, but this is like the crazy expo of all crazy expos, in my opinion.
Well, within our field.
Obviously, they have
Comic-Con, which I've heard
there's
is kind
Comic-Con,
of crazy.
and there's Pornathon, and all those other kind of,
Right.
they have like crazy stuff like that, which
All right.
they have that in Las Vegas. They have some kind of like giant
Achievement
adult
one
entertainment.
unlocked. You made the sound crew crack up.
My goal in life has been
Okay, let's
achieved.
move on to
So,
what's
let's really get off to Pornathon, but or whatever the hell.
what's
it's called.
challenge number 2.
Yeah, immediate things that I saw on my giant, badly folded map was Ed Scotus, who's an awful good friend of ours,
Yeah.
and a bunch of SANS people.
He was on the map?
He is. He's on
Okay.
the map today. They had a panel with
Okay.
a bunch of SANS people. They were doing the 5 most dangerous new attack techniques at like 4:20 this afternoon.
Oh, wow.
So that's probably.
Do any of them involve knives?
Well, yeah, that's what I was wondering. Okay, you read my mind. I literally saw it was like, you're gonna walk in there, and there's gonna be a guy holding a banana. If
Right.
anybody's ever watched Monty Python. We can
Now
do
explain
knives
to the
today.
kiddies what Monty Python is.
Yeah, but regardless, I thought it sounded interesting, and by a bunch of people that, and these are just things that caught my eye. So I'm not trying to advocate, because like I said, there's a giant bedsheet-sized map of sessions, and today's one of the busiest days for sessions. So
this is the peak
Wednesday
day.
ones were like the longest and the whole thing. So, I think the strategy here is always going to have to be, you sit down, you're going to have to look for things that catch your eye, people stuff you're interested in, and they do have blocks that are like by topics, and like I think we were talking about on the outro we did on Monday about the like family and all that, like family scams and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
which was a new thing that they had that I thought that's finished, but regardless. There was a session on post. I know Jeff doesn't like to hear about post-quantum encryption, but there was I did an interview yesterday with Chris Hickman, and I actually did have several interviews today that involve post-quantum encryption, and they were talking about there's a session at 1:20 today where he's talking about how to fast track.
How many years away from quantum computing being more or less publicly available are we this year?
Not
What are they
many.
saying? It's getting smaller?
Yeah, because and Chris and I were talking about that, and I asked him a very similar question,
Right.
and one of the things he said that made me sort of realize, because I'd been kind of saying like 3 to 5, which is sort of my stock answer for everything. They're
Right.
like, when will you die? 3 to 5? Yeah, but
You could say 42 months.
42 months, yeah, whatever. But he said, think about it this way, because of the cloud, it's not going to necessarily be the transition from UNIVAC to an Apple II.
Right.
It's going to be the transition from IBM has this elaborate thing, or Google has this elaborate thing, and now they're selling time on it.
Right.
So suddenly, it's just like AWS or any of these other kind of products. You can say, I need to buy some quantum time, and you just buy it by the cycle or however they choose to sell it. And so suddenly, it's going to be here quicker than you think.
Is that really the roadblock now? Do you think it's not that the technology hasn't quite gotten there, but they're still trying to figure out how to monetize it?
Yeah. No, I think it's still the technology. I mean, they're just not getting enough stable qubits in the space. I mean, they're getting there. I think I saw 156 qubits stable now. And so you're starting to get into the realm of like, this is feasible outside of a laboratory kind of environment.
Okay.
But currently, all the quantum computers are still in that what I call the UNIVAC world of this giant hulking thing with a lot of special needs.
So, for context for younger people in the audience, when Doug says a UNIVAC computer, he's talking about radio vacuum glass tubes.
With a pull start.
That the computer was, probably half the size of this hall that we're in.
Oh yeah, I mean the UNIVAC was massive. It was like rooms and rooms of stuff, and you had to warm it up. So it was like when your great grandfather turned on the radio. It was like you waited till the tubes got good and hot before you could do anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean it was a massive thing, and I guess my point is that when I call it that, I just mean that there's this there's this big hulking thing somewhere
Right.
in a laboratory.
I just want to make sure people understand the,
No,
the scope of big
you
hulking
keep me
thing.
honest on that.
I mean, I can picture the UNIVAC. I've seen
But
the
if
pictures.
you have to dip,
I might have touched one at
if
one
everything's sitting in a pool of liquid nitrogen to keep it cool enough to operate, that's just not something you sell people at home.
Mm-hmm.
And when UNIVAC came out, it was like nobody could have conceptualized that eventually people would be carrying this around, which is far, far, far more powerful.
Right.
And I can walk down the street and stumble and fall into a puddle full of God knows what and drop my phone down a storm grate. Whereas the UNIVAC was brought in on a semi-truck, by
Right.
probably, I don't know, was it on a semi-truck?
It would have been
It was
several.
probably just built in a lab and it stayed there.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly mobile.
Yeah.
But all right, my turn. Shifting gears.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking about this earlier, and you bring up Ed SCOTUS, and end of the day last night, I'm scrolling through, the de facto social media for at least me, which is LinkedIn, a little bit of Facebook, and just seeing people that I know posting about their adventures in RSAC conference, and it always impresses me that I come out here every year and I run into so many people that I know, and I'll randomly bump into people on the street or on the expo floor type of thing, but then I usually go home and find out, oh, so-and-so was there? I wonder where they were. So it's so massive here that it's almost impossible, it's impossible to see everything in the vendor floor. It's impossible to run into everybody unless you're really, really deliberate. Like Ed SCOTUS he and I have been here for 10 years. I don't think I've ever bumped into him because he does something over here. Somebody else I know does something over here, and we all have our little pods and stuff. We have our own little pod that we run around.
Yeah.
If you like smoking cigars, you can join us. But it's a very small, or if you want to go to any of the parties, I got all the invites. But it's just funny to me that people have amazing experiences here and they talk about it, and I'm like, and they're with a completely different subculture, subcrowd than the one that and I try to expose myself to as many as possible. It doesn't mean anything other than this place is just massive.
Yeah.
But it is an opportunity for people to come and enrich themselves, learn something, see people they know. I've run into there's some pioneers here this week and legends.
Yeah.
I happened to I was walking on the street yesterday, and Bruce Schneier was coming towards me. So I stopped him and said, "Hey, Bruce, we've met before."
And you said you saw Dan Farmer.
I saw Dan Farmer a couple days ago. Not that they're even remotely in the same league, mind you. I reminded Bruce, because I met him a couple years ago, and I told him, I've been trolling you for years, because he came into prominence because he wrote the book, what was the name of it? Applied Cryptography. And that's how he became famous. I think that's the name of his first book. But in that book, and I was still working at NSA when I got it, I'm like, oh, what's this guy from the outside saying about cryptography? And he basically was saying, why are we worrying about internet security? Just encrypt everything and you're done. And I read that and I'm like, this guy's a moron, and I put the book down. And then years later, he came out with another book that was called, I think, Truth and Lies. And in that book, he says, okay, basically I was young and naive when I wrote the first book. There's more to it than that. So I reminded him of that when I met him a few years ago.
I bet he appreciated it.
And he's like, fair. But anyway, I mean, I'm an NSA cryptanalyst. He's not, but he gets all the fame and the glory because he talks about quantum cryptography.
True. Another thing you should go see though while you're here is go up to the bookstore.
Yes.
I mean, that sounds really old-fashioned and boring, but it's really cool, and they have.
Explain to him what books are.
Yeah. Okay. So there's these things, but if you go up on the Esplanade, they have shelves of their Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Which is really, really cool, and I was overwhelmed with it because one, I have a lot of the books,
right?
Which I was like, wow, I feel validated. And they also had books by Neil Stephenson on the shelf. So they had Cryptonomicon.
Oh, nice.
I can never say it right. Cryptonomicon, and they had. Why do you do this, Neil? I can't pronounce the names of your books. The other one is like RAED Me or something like that. I mean, I've read them all,
okay.
and I love Neil Stephenson, but I was really happy. And he said that they vote on which books will be on the shelves, and then that. So if you're interested in such thing, even if you don't want to say buy a book, like a physical book to lug around, you can obviously find books that other people think are important in this field, and they weren't just
so we've
fiction.
neglected. You can also shop. And there's
You
also
can.
all the swag and the giveaways.
Well, yeah.
And
Just be careful with your swag, because I've seen these people at the airport with like,
Yeah.
5 shopping bags trying to get on the plane, and they're like, yeah, you're gonna have to pick one of those to keep, and the rest are going in the
you
trash.
get two carry-ons, and that's it.
Yeah, I always had that. Like that's like early conference going mistakes,
Right.
that you make. Like when I first went to like an academic conference, it was in Washington D.C., and they were all giving away textbooks. And this was a long time ago, and it was like, oh my God, I can get a textbook. And I took one, and the next thing I knew, I had like 8 textbooks, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do with these? I had to buy a suitcase to take them home. Yeah.
Well, we would be remiss if we didn't say that you guys should tune in all throughout the day.
You should.
We are going to have a series of executive interviews from a lot of different companies. I've got a couple interviews. You've got a couple
I have a couple.
interviews.
Yeah, so we got
I've actually
live
been
interviews all day.
enjoying the conversations we've been having this year.
I think
I
so.
think companies have a better story to tell now about that fun little buzzword that's flying around, AI, and but they're actually trying to implement it and use it, and it's more than just can I use it in a sentence. They actually have a strategy for it, most of them.
Well, so we probably should wrap up, because all the alarms are going off. There's like people waving flags over there in the corner.
That guy's got a banana in his hand.
And they've got and they've got the hook ready, and the orchestra's warming up. So please stick around for the day. We got tons of live streams for you from Doug White and Jeff Mann. We're here at RSAC. Come by, say hi. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be seeing you again soon today.
We'll be right back.